All right, welcome to episode 25 of the At Bat podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez along with Miles Porter. How we doing, man?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to have this day off, sort of. So from work. So all invested. I was at the Cubs game yesterday and watched Alfonso Rivas take three strikes. Sorry, three. He took three. He didn't see. He didn't. This is the lead off the ninth inning. You know, when me and Cubs need a rally to get going, took every single pitch. Strike one, two, three. I mean, at least swing at one. At least foul one off.
Yeah,
Show me that you care.
right.
Besides that, it's been good.
Just a little piece, nothing too crazy, like none.
Yeah. Just something.
Oh, oh man, no, yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's just the way it's been going, so definitely not surprised. But
Right.
on the bright side, we do have a guest today, and we're really it was a great interview that we had already with Dominic Cotroneo. He does a lot of things. It honestly, like going down the list, I mean, he just does so many things for when it comes to baseball. He does a post game for the Brewers. He does stats for BallySports and TBS. He does play by play. So a lot of stuff, and we break it down. Talk Brewers baseball, talk Cubs and White Sox, talk rule changes. So yeah, definitely want to stay tuned for that towards the end of the show. But of course, we're going to start off with talking about our own area, which is Chicago and White Sox baseball, where the White Sox are 76 and 71 to start the week. We are filming this on a Monday, and they had a good week when it comes to winning losses, but when it comes to gaining ground, it wasn't not it wasn't anything good because they're sitting 4 games back of the Guardians. As we sit here now with about everyone's got maybe like 16, 17 games left around there. It's just because at this point for the Sox, it just feels like every game should be won because of the circumstances. Easier said than done. But we'll go over just their series and what happened there. So they finished off the series against the Rockies. It was just a 2-gamer. They lost 3-0. Freeland outpitched Dylan Cease. It just feels like one of those games they should have had. Also, I mean, these games this week, with Cleveland, or sorry, not Cleveland, with Detroit and Colorado, you just thought they should have won all of them. They played Cleveland for one, and they won that game. And at that point in time, it just felt like the tides were officially changing. But after that win, in which Lance Lynn pitched a great game, he had 6 innings, 2 earned runs, and also the Sox hit 5 home runs. After that, the Sox went to Detroit, and they lost the first game of that series in extra innings. That one really hurt. I mean, Jose Abreu, he had a big hit in the 8th. And the Tigers hit sac fly in the 10th inning. That's the one that won it for them. They ended up winning the last 2 games of that series, ended up winning that series. But it was, again, just another missed opportunity when it came to that loss, just because Cleveland, I believe Cleveland lost that day, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, they won a series against the Twins over the weekend. So the Sox weren't able to gain that much ground. But yeah, just what's your take on the Sox overall week and kind of it sounds funny because they only lost 2 games throughout the week. How does it feel when it comes to like the missed opportunity aspect of it all?
It's just that point of the season where you just every loss is gonna hurt. Every loss isn't good, especially against teams like the Tigers. This is a team that you just have to take care of business when it comes to them. It's a team you got to sweep. You know that you're still really crawling back for at least a wild card spot. Um, but aside from that, this is a team that's been playing very well. They're winning games right now. I think there's a lot of confidence. I'm not going to say too little, too late, but I think that there's the chances are dwindling pretty significantly at the moment. I think that this is something that it's unfortunate, just because of the expectations that we had for this team going into the season. But there's a lot of stuff to address going into the off season, and I am, I'm hoping maybe there's some sort of run they can pull together and go, for these last few weeks. But it's looking a little bit dim. I just love to see the fight in them. That's my big thing. I love to see the fight. I love to see them coming back. For the most part, taking care of their business right now. Keep your foot on the gas for the rest of the season. For what's left in the season, maybe something good can happen. But it's unfortunate that it took us till this point to really find our groove.
Yeah, and we even talk about it with Dominic too in the interview today, and just how different they've been playing
Yeah,
without Tony La Russa. And again, we said it last time, we'll say it again. Hopefully, he gets back in the dugout ASAP. But it is interesting to see how they've played under Miguel Cairo, because the way that and we talked about it last episode a little bit too, is the way he addressed the team. And he said that it came out to the media that he um had told the players, if you don't want to win, if you don't want to be here, then leave. And I think that, that obviously, lit a fire under the Sox that has been able to help them. And it showed when it comes to the wins and loss record, but
yeah,
like I said before, they also need people to lose ahead of them. Cleveland hasn't really lost that much. They've been able to maintain their spot in the division. So yeah, and that is what is unfortunate about the spot the Sox are in, is that you never want to leave it up to another team, right? You always want to be the one in control, and Cleveland
yeah,
is in the driver's seat, not
yeah,
the Sox. But speaking about Cleveland, the Sox do have the rest of the season is huge, obviously, but this it kind of starts the big stretch finally, where it's just mostly AL Central teams. Um, they play Cleveland for a 3-game series. And then besides, the rest of the way, besides a little series against the Padres, which should be fun to watch, the rest of the way is just AL Central teams. Starting again with the Guardians this week.
yeah.
What do you think we'll see in that series? And what do you expect from the team like the Guardians? How are they going to match up against the Sox?
Yeah, I'm expecting a pretty hard fought series, honestly.
Hmm.
These are one team's trying to maintain what they have, the other team is trying to catch that team.
Hmm.
This is gonna be a pretty hard fought series. You got Savali on the mound for game one. I think the Sox can really, get to him early. I really do. I've always believed in this team offensively. I think a lot of what's been going on the past week is offensively. This team has been clicking on all cylinders, which has been a pleasure to watch. As we talked about, Vaughn with a grand slam, Abreu. There's so many good things to take away from this team offensively, especially over the past week. I don't see a reason why the Sox don't, kind of make the Guardians sweat a little bit. Don't let do not let them take this division and just walk all over you and just run away with it. They're going to take it. The Sox are going to have to be the team. Make them fight for it. Make them
Hmm.
sweat when they come to Chicago. They're coming to your house. You're fighting for something. That's like the main thing. That's the main thing. Stay motivated. Stay fired up because good things can happen. The Sox they take three from this team and then take care of business against the Tigers. All of a sudden, it's a little bit different now going forward. Now there's much more pressure on the Guardians to finish strong, and the White Sox will be the ones with the momentum. To me, it's now or never. Either you take care of business against the Guardians, and then you handle the Tigers this weekend, or we kind of have this 500 mindset where it's like we'll win a few, then we'll lose a few, and we'll see what happens. No, it's you win both of these series, or that's it. That's it for the season. So I think the Sox are gonna make this team sweat. I think they know what's at stake. I think Kairos has been incredible. I think he's been incredible for this team in terms of firing them up. And I think with that mentality that he's given these players, there's so much good momentum going into this series. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and it really it will be a showdown, especially it being the last time that the Sox play the Guardians this season. So the Sox really want to leave the Guardians with the taste in their mouth that they know the Sox are right behind them. So it's going to be definitely the definition of a showdown, and it's cool that you get to see Dylan Cease take on Savali in that first game. It's going to be, I mean, the both teams
Yeah.
have basically, the top tier pitching going. You got C. Savali game one, Lance
Hmm.
Lynn, McKenzie game two, and then Johnny Cueto and Bieber in game three. So
Yeah.
Sox are going to be throwing everything they got at them. And it's good that it's at home as well. The season
Yeah.
series is 9-7 Cleveland. So these two teams have been neck and neck, not only in the division, but against each other. So, yeah, it really is mind boggling how much of a parity this not only the division but just these 2 3 teams in the division have been all season. Twins are obviously fading out. I mean, somebody say they're done. 7 games back of the division. So that might be it. But they will have their chance at having their last say against the Sox because they do face the Sox for 6 of the last 9 games of the season. So it's going to be a fun ride, and definitely going to keep an eye on those games in Cleveland because those are going to be playoff games. These
Yeah.
basically all the games are playoff, but when you play
Yeah.
teams that's ahead of you, that's more
Mhm.
than just a game. So
Yeah.
yeah, so 3 against Cleveland, 3 against Detroit. That's what's awaits the Sox this week. Shifting over to the north side of Chicago, the Cubs are 62-84. They sweep the Mets and then they lose a series to the Rockies. They had it was really a weird week when you look at it because we're over here hyped that they swept the Mets, a team that's a lot of teams
Mhm.
consider World Series. They could be in the World Series. They themselves are facing obstacles in the Braves and all that. So it's cool to
Yeah.
win that series, sweep that,
Yeah.
and then the Cubs come back home and lose a series to the Rockies. So that's kind of just says it all. Kind of says it all right there. In game 2 of the Mets, we talked a little bit last show about how the Cubs beat DeGrom. Ian Happ had a big home run in that one. And then in game 3, they won that one 6-3. They scored 6 runs off Peterson in the first,
Yeah.
and they never looked back. And that one I thought was for us that we got nothing to look forward to. Was a really fun one because just Mets fans were just giving it to them, to the team, on the field in the first inning, just booing like, yeah, no tomorrow. So good to see
Yeah.
that. Then yeah, like I said, that first game of the Rocky series, Cubs started off well. Marcus Stroman won at home. He dazzled. He led the Cubs to a 2-1 win. McKinstry had another home run for the Cubs. And then after that, they ended up, it was 2 more competitive games against the Rockies, but they still ended up losing them. Game 2, they lost 3-1. Game 3, they lost 4-3. One of the cool things I did want to talk about is just, Wisniewski and how good he's been. Whether it be out of the bullpen or, out of, as a starter, which just was his first start. And he was, I mean, just, you know, almost untouchable. 7 innings,
Yeah.
1 run, 7 Ks. Yeah, kind of what are you seeing from the kid? Like, he seems to not be phased by the big leagues at all. So, what do you like so far about him in the Cubs uniform?
I love that he pitches with so much focus. There's also a lot of confidence there as well. You know, for being 24 years old and being thrown into such a big market on a team that is looking for guys who want opportunities, looking for guys who are going to perform and be a part of the future. I think you look at Wisniewski and there's so much to be excited about. Um, in terms of his stuff, just attacking hitters, not being afraid of anyone. He's just going right at them, and I think that's one of the big things going forward. Is there's a difference between you attacking a hitter and you just leaving stuff over the plate. No, he's attacking. He's giving every hitter his best stuff, and it's showing. So it's players like this that I think it's okay to feel optimistic about going forward. I think we do have a small sample size, but all in all, there's so much good to look forward to. Now, do I want to see him during the full year of pitching? Absolutely. But even with this small sample size that I'm seeing in the big games that he's pitched in, or big games, important games, I think that there is something to be said there. So that's just another one of those pieces that we could look at in 2 to 3 years now and think, hey, remember when he had those first few starts in 2022, and now he's a part of this next giant core Cubs team. So I feel good. I feel really good about this kid going forward.
Yeah, and we've talked about him before, obviously, in the show, like when he made his debut and all that. And
Yeah,
I at the time, I said like I like his stuff out of the bullpen, and you never know where he's going to end up. But and you kind of said it too, whether it be the starting rotation or out of the bullpen, yeah, I think he's going to be great. But and kind of seeing him out of the as a starter, I mean that looked pretty nasty. So definitely like him regardless of where we put him at. And I think the way that the Cubs are kind of shifting towards, or the way the direction they're going in, he might be good out of the rotation. because of the fact that guys like Albert Alzolay have come back and kind of like their roles. I think they're kind of getting accustomed to maybe like a bullpen that might be the future for a guy like Alzolay, a spot in the bullpen. Who knows? But either way, it's to have more pitching, come back from the injured list or whatever. And to get a couple more looks at before the offseason to kind of give the Cubs a little bit more of a preview, or in a way of also to trade pieces or stuff like that, whatever they want to move around to make this team better. So we'll see what happens in there. Javier Assad, he had a tough start in that Rocky series. He's been doing so well up to that point. I mean, just his stuff looks good, and he just got tagged for some runs in the first two innings. And the Cubs weren't be able to recover in the series finale. Another thing I want to talk about too is Nico Horner. His triceps injury looks a little worse than they expected, or than they thought. The MRI revealed, just some more tough news. David Ross said he does feel good, but he's gonna need a few more days. But he's gonna avoid the injured list. So I guess it's good. We'll see him in sooner rather than later. But Christopher Morel's looked really good at shortstop. So that's something that's been a plus in that case. And they've said it before, right? That Christopher Morel is gonna be their super utility man, the future, like the guy. But and a lot of people take that, and think he's gonna come off the bench or something, and it's like, no, that's not what they mean. I think what they mean is that he could play everywhere, right? Regardless, he'll be in the lineup and he'll just be everywhere, kind of like Ben Zobrist has been doing, like throughout his career, did that. So it's really good to see Christopher Morel do that. And then one last thing too that I did want to get your take on was it is the end of an era in Chicago, on the north side of Chicago, as we finally say goodbye to Frank Schwindel.
Man, the sloppy swish, man. Listen, I, here's why I really feel this one. When the entire core, not the entire core, when our guys were sent off last year, the trade deadline, Cubs fans were kind of left with this empty feeling of, well, who's gonna give us that entertainment or that joy that we had. Frank Schwindel's run last year for that half of the year that he had, it was so entertaining. It was so entertaining. The personality that he brought, like how productive he was at the plate. Just how vibrant he was, and how he'd make every time that there was a PFP and he flipped the ball to the pitcher to step on first, he'd point to the. It's just he gave us kind of that joy and enthusiasm that we needed for the north side. So for that, I'm very, very, thankful for, what he did in the first half, in the second half last year. So there's so much that I just, I would just say thank you and best of luck to your future endeavors. I think that he's a very, very solid fielding first baseman. He came he came after someone which is a pretty hard act to follow up in Rizzo. So for him to come to Chicago and be himself and perform well for the period of time that he did, I think it speaks, volumes for the kind of person he is, bigger than the ball player. So I'm super, I'm super thankful for that. I was on the fence about him. I was like, man, he's no Rizzo, man. I'm not trying to hear it, man. But you know, he ended up becoming one of my favorite players on the Cubs for his time here. So, I'm wishing him the best of luck. If I had to say anything, it'd be thank you for providing us with the optimism that a lot of the fans needed when a lot of players parted their way.
Yeah, man. And the thing is too, is it's that run that he had in 2021 was, I mean, there's no way to put it. It was MVP like. I mean, it
Yeah,
really was.
yeah,
By the numbers, you look at the numbers. He played,
yeah.
played with us 56 games, 56 games. He had an OPS plus of 165, an OPS of 1,000.
Come on, bro.
The dude was nasty.
Yeah,
It's like nothing to take lightly. But yeah, I mean, it's like you say, wish him the best, and I'll always remember Frank Schwindel because he was there when we needed a hero most. It's
exactly.
true. It is. because we
Thank
needed
you
a
to the Swish.
yeah, exactly. So hopefully, and not even hopefully, he'll find another team and he'll start for
Yes.
another team for sure.
Yes.
Um, and hey, maybe hey, and who knows? We might see him have some Frank the Tank magic in the postseason one day for like the Braves or something. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
hopefully he gets to do that. So, and the Cubs, they do play Miami and they play at Pittsburgh this weekend. So it's cool to go around and have some nice scenic parks, because other than that, we're just playing for fun at this point. Got just
Yeah.
a handful of games, but hopefully can rattle some wins, because um as my own, I've created this myself. Nobody else has. But this is the chase for 70. The goal is to just win 70 games.
I
If we
was
win
telling my
70,
dad that the other day.
yeah. Like the dude, if we
Yeah.
win 70 games, it just looks better and it looks a little more inviting for a free agent. I
Yeah.
think if you look at a team that won 68 games compared to a team that won 72 or something like that, it's different. I don't know. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything helps at this point, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Give us
uh,
70. Give us
yeah,
70.
exactly. Give us 70. The chase for 70.
Yeah.
I've deemed it, so we'll see what happens. But that's gonna be all the time we have for this segment of the show. But coming up, Dominic Cotroneo joins us, and we talk. Like I said, we talk Brewers baseball, White Sox baseball, his career as a play-by-play and also as a stats man for the Brewers, BallySports TBS. So definitely hope you enjoy this. And we'll see you on the other side. We'll sign off for you. All right. Enjoy the interview. All right. Welcome to the interview portion of the At Bat Baseball podcast. On today's show, we have Dominic Cotroneo. I saw your Twitter. It says on there, the pronunciation. I made sure to pay attention to that,
Nailed it.
All right, we got it. And then and yeah, looking at, I mean, just your bio says it all, but I mean, kind of just introducing what you do. There's a lot, so I might miss a few things. You do a lot. He hosts the Milwaukee Brewers postgame on Wisconsin 620 WTMJ. You also host your own podcast, the Locked On Brewers podcast. You do play-by-play for the Pac-12 network, and you do stats and research for BallySports and TBS. Thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. I think you got about. I think that's everything.
Yeah, right.
It
Okay.
depends on the day, really.
Yeah, no, yeah. And then I was telling you a little bit off air, just like the fact that I've seen your stuff, whether it be stats on Twitter or TikToks and stuff like that. So it's kind of seeing like your career and all that is kind of interesting of what you do. So definitely kind of want to start off on like getting to know you. So tell us where you're from and how you got into baseball, and also your career, and just kind of talk a little bit about it. And you can focus on baseball, just obviously because it's a baseball podcast. So kind of go for it. See what you got.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, baseball is the majority of it, quite frankly. So I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up there. Went to Arizona State University, and I've always known I've wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster, and was doing it at Arizona State for every sport imaginable, from baseball to hockey to pickleball. Did everything I could. Then got to do Cape Cod League baseball, got to do minor league baseball, and then 2020 happened, and the whole world got turned upside down. I was laid off from the Astros organization. I was in Double A at the time. I mean, minor league baseball is a very budget centric, business, and that I understood, and the crazy times that we were in. So turned out to be the best thing could ever happen to me, because then I moved to Milwaukee in the spring of 2021 to work for the current role that I'm in with Bally Sports Wisconsin, with Brian Anderson as his stats man. And that's blossomed into, doing national work on TBS and for their postseason as well. So it's very much a case of hard work, right place, right time. And I still am planning on trying to get back into play by play. It's just this is a pretty darn good consolation prize in the meantime.
That's amazing. Is there any announcers that you've listened to growing up that you admire? For me, as a Cubs fan, it's Pat Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, who would that be?
Well, the other thing too, I forgot to mention, there's my dad's a broadcaster as well. My dad works for the Oakland Athletics. This is his 30th season in the show. He's been the number 2 voice there for the last 17 seasons. So I've listened to my dad for a long time. When I was younger, I was in Texas when he was with the Rangers. So Eric Nadel is a big mentor of mine. He's the radio voice of the Rangers. Obviously, Brian Anderson, who I work for and I'm on location with right now, as we're getting ready to do TBS this week. And aside from them, John Miller is a long time absolute gem of a voice. I'm also one of those people that I listen to the radio more than I watch baseball on TV. So maybe some guys that folks are. I mean, talk about Cubs, Len Casper before we switched down to the
Mhm.
South Side. I mean, on TV he was great. He's even better on radio. So there's so many great radio broadcasters out there. That's kind of where my niche has come from. But those are the ones that jump out to me.
Man, you mentioned John Miller. I feel like, growing I mean, I'm going on 28 now and kind of like uh I feel like he's underrated. Nobody talks about John Miller enough, I feel like. Right,
I don't
like
know if he could be underrated and be in the Hall of Fame.
that's
I think it's the West Coast
well,
thing,
yeah,
but John is
yeah,
also one of the nicest dudes on the planet. He
yeah.
prepares meticulously. Everybody loves him. He treats everyone fairly the same. And for us, like kind of very young formative years of Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's just so iconic and one of the best. And the Giants have one of the best booths in all of baseball with him
Oh
in
yeah.
radio and then Krupp and Kuip on television. Can't beat that.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's like everyone talks about, Vince Scully to do this and that, and I'm like, I don't know if people are like around our age. I'm assuming you're around our age a little bit because
Mhm.
I'm in 28 miles, 25. So like, I feel like nobody really mentions and like John, like they don't mention John Miller the same way, and I'm like, dude, John Miller's like one of the best of all time, and like just Sunday Night Baseball like that. Growing up on that, and like his just his voice with him, him and Joe Morgan, it was awesome. So yeah, great to hear that. I mean, definitely growing up, I also want to be a play-by-play announcer, so I can relate to that. With like listening to guys and kind of doing, and that's pretty cool knowing too that your dad is also has been in the business for a long time. It's pretty awesome. And I also kind of want to shift out to like the Brewers, and then you obviously work with the Brewers. Wanted to get your take on where they stand right now. Obviously, still in the hunt, still in the playoff hunt. They, a lot of people picked them to pick the Central. Obviously, at this point in time, it doesn't look like they're going to do that with 16 games to go. They're 8 games back. But kind of where do you stand right now with where the Brewers are heading? Especially, they still haven't got a chance to play in the postseason.
A lot of folks want to point to the fact that they didn't add a bat in this
Mm,
past trade deadline, and the trade of Josh Hader might have rattled
mm,
the clubhouse more than they expected to. Chemistry is a thing that isn't really quantifiable, and it's
mm,
something that might have impacted the Brewers more than they anticipated. But when I look at the hitter market this past trade deadline, it wasn't great. It didn't really fit the needs of what the Brewers needed. And the price was exorbitant from what I heard from my sources of what teams were asking for their hitters. And quite frankly, the Brewers, it's an infamous line now from President of Baseball Operations, David Stearns, but I believe it 100% of him saying, we want to take as many bites at the apple as possible, meaning, look, we can't just tear it all down for 1 year and anything could go wrong. You look at this season with all the injuries the Brewers have had, starting wise and relief wise, even position players too. It's not worth it to go all in for this season. And they can be equally excited about their top level AAA prospects right now that should be helping the team next season. And they have somebody being compared to Ronald Acuna Jr. right now in AA in Jackson Churio. So is it worth it to trade one of those guys for a month and a half of a rental bat? I don't think it's worth it. And the Brewers have to be creative in that regard because of their market. And it sucks to make those hard decisions now, but I think 3 years down the road, we're going to look back on that deal. Man, they saw the long game, and I do think that maybe you probably are going to be on the outside looking in this season because of the lack of tiebreakers against the Padres and Phillies. You're still in a great position to compete again healthy next season.
Yeah, I like that you made that point. I've always thought that the Brewers are a very talented team, especially looking at the division this year. The Central isn't one of the most competitive leagues divisions in the MLB. But with that being said, do you feel like there's more of a long-term goal here with the Brewers? Kind of like you said, if we don't, if there's no success going into the postseason this year, there's a lot of talent coming up. Would you want to see them add any veteran arms, veteran bats? Do you see that kind of being a factor that'll help them, kind of push back past the Cardinals next year? Or are you pretty content with what they have coming up?
Well, you got to remember their core is intact for another 2 seasons, right? Corbin Burns is not a free agent until 2025. Brandon Woodruff is not a free agent until 2025. So, yes, they're going to get more expensive in arbitration these next 2 years, but Freddie Peralta is on a team friendly deal. Aaron Ashby, who's one of their young studs, is on a team friendly deal now. They've got Willie Adames under team control for another 2 seasons. They're in a window right now that they should be complementing that core. Renfro's under team control for another season. You look at the talent they have arriving, a lot of it's in the outfield. I mean, Churio's an outfielder. Another kid, Sal Frelick, who's a first-round pick from a year ago, is a speedy outfielder. So you have those guys complementing your power of Renfro and Adames. And if whatever Yelich becomes, if he's a he becomes an elite leadoff hitter like he's been in the second half of the season, so be it. It's better than getting nothing out of him like you had in 2020 and 2021. So the Brewers are certainly in a very good position to rebound next season. It's easy to overreact and say, oh my gosh, it's all over, tear it down. Look, the Cardinals have been one of the best teams in baseball, not just in the Central, but in all the baseball in the second half. I don't know what it was going to take to stop that train because they have been incredible to watch. Tip my cap to them and Wainwright, and they've got that voodoo magic going on right now with Molina and Pujols getting ready to retire. So they've got all the energy in the world, but it's been a heck of a year. But I think the Brewers are very ready to compete again in 2023.
Yeah, and that's, you make a good point with the Cardinals. I mean, going into the season, I did pick the Brewers to win the Central. Just the way they play against everyone in the Central, I was like, I could see it. And the Cardinals, going into it, even though they had the types of players they had, I was kind of like, I don't know if the pitching's there, but as you said, they got some magic going on, and it's really cool to see. Even as a Cubs fan, it's really cool to see Albert Pujols, a guy you've seen almost like his whole career, and kind of flourishing even in his last season. It's awesome. Obviously, as being a Chicago baseball podcast, wanted to get your take on each, both the Cubs and the White Sox. Obviously, the Cubs are in the middle of, I guess, a rebuild, even if they don't want to say it. But they obviously, a lot of people think, hey, make a couple additions in the offseason. Who knows, next year, maybe a wild card team. Who knows? But on the White Sox end of things, they could still make the postseason this season. Just wanted to get your take on both of these Chicago teams.
Well, I'll start with the White Sox
Mhm.
because they're really in a predicament right now because obviously we know Jerry Reinsdorf and Tony La Russa go way back, but
Mhm.
clearly the team is playing better without Tony La Russa. So it's one of those things that they're going to have to address that elephant in the room coming up this offseason. But what a run they're trying to make right now and prove that they can stay in this. I don't think they're going to have enough pitching to get it done. Lynn has been decent, but Giolito's been a disappointment. Cease has been incredible, but the bullpen has been so weird trying to get it to Hendricks, and I just don't see it happening for the White Sox. And for the Cubs, I mean, shoot, they are kind of a sleeping giant, if you will. But here's my thing with the Cubs. I mean, a lot of their money is dead money, of course, in Jason Hayward, but they're only spending $20 more million than the Brewers. That should never happen. And the Ricketts family should never get away with that. They should be ready to spend this offseason. If Correa opts out, they need to be the front runner to get Carlos Correa because, look, Nico Horner is a great defensive shortstop. Nick Madrigal, I know you traded for him. You'll find a way to make room for Carlos Correa if one of those guys needs to slide to third or slide to second, whatever it is, because the Cubs need to be real players this free agency. Stroman turned out to be a great deal. You don't know what you're going to get out of Hendricks after his shoulder issue. They need to go into the pitcher market. I still think they're a sleeping giant this coming off season, and some of their talent is closer than a lot of people give credit for. In fact, Brennan Davis actually went to the same high school as me back in Arizona. So he went to Basha, I went to Basha as well. He's obviously a few years younger than me, but knowing from the people that I've talked to what they believe he can become, I mean, he's playing a lot of outfield as of late. He can be somebody very, very exciting. And it's very odd that they're probably going to give the qualifying offer to Contreras so that way he can get a draft pick compensation because they're not going to pay him. Who knows? It's all very odd right now for the Cubs, but they are somebody that as soon as the Ricketts decide to open up the checkbook, look out because they should be somebody that competes every single year.
Yeah, this is something that, I was at the Cubs game yesterday. This is something that every Cubs fan is talking about, going forward. Do you feel with these rule changes coming into the MLB next year, does that affect any team's planning of, how they want to pick up guys or in terms of pace? And, you never know because some of these guys who are coming in to pitch and there's a pitch clock, just pitching quicker in between pitches, does that, waste their energy a bit? How much do you think this impacts the MLB going forward next year in terms of just teams adjusting their rosters?
Well, I don't think the pitch clock's going to impact as much as many people say it is because and people all want to point to the pitchers. There are a lot of hitters that take forever to get into the box too. So those guys are going to equally be affected. They're big leaguers, man. It's not going to take that much of a difference. And quite frankly, I think they'll welcome the change. What I think you're going to see in baseball coming up is the priority on defense all of a sudden. Range, speed, agility. We're getting to see athletes again, not just, oh, pluck a guy at second base and we'll shift him over, or hey, pluck a guy at third base and we'll shift him over and have the short. No, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. So I see defense being a priority, and the Cubs are in a good position if they don't get Correa with Horner and Madrigal, some great defensive up the middle guys. I don't see Hap as a future center fielder, but hey, it can work in the time being. But athleticism and range is going to be in vogue again, and even stolen bases are going to be in vogue with the new pickoff rule that not a lot of folks have talked about. That you only get 2 pickoffs per plate appearance, and if you don't get him on the third, it's a balk, and he goes to second. So speed and agility and athletes are going to get back in style here in baseball coming up next season.
No, yeah, you make some good points, and yeah, I've had plenty of arguments in the past, like a week or so. Just people are like, "Oh, this," people questioning the integrity of the game, and I'm like, I don't understand where they come from with that, but it's definitely going to be interesting when going forward with the rules, and it's definitely with the shift and all that, because obviously the clock, I don't think it's going to affect necessarily the game in general. It's going to, like, in the sense of when you're watching, I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be smoother maybe, but the shift is the one I think is going to be the most interesting, I think, to see how it affects the game, and I definitely want to see more offense, so I'm fine with that. Well, Dominic, we ran out of time, but hey, great having you on, and best of luck with your career. And I definitely want to have you on, sometime real soon, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me. Hope you guys have a great show moving on.
All right. Thank you. All right. So thank you again to Dominic Cotroneo. As we told him, we haven't had that many guests, on the show, as we're a young podcast, so wrapping up we're almost going to wrap up. We're 25 episodes in. We're almost going to wrap up our first season. So it's, so we're, and we still have some stuff in the off season that we got planned out. So hopefully everything works out. But yeah, thanks again to Dominic. And that will wrap up another episode of the At Bat Baseball podcast presented by War Media. So for Saul Rodriguez and Miles Porter, we'll see you next week, everybody.